We may have managed to pollute what could possibly be our future home, all before we even live there. Waste, as it turns out, is as big a problem in outer space as it is down here on Earth. There happens to be so much space junk floating around that an international effort is underway to turn all that waste into usable rocket fuel. And to save you the head scratch, we've round up everything you need to know in this video. All you need to know about space junk. To understand the magnitude of space junk floating around, we have to be aware of exactly how crowded it has become amongst the stars up there. According to reports, there are more than 2,200 satellites orbiting our little blue ball as we speak. That's just a count of the operational satellites. We can't even begin to put a number on the inoperable satellites, spent rockets, and the shards from broken up space equipment wandering around in space. Luckily, NASA can. The Space Authority has given a ballpark figure of the space junk tracked by the Department of Defense's Global Space Surveillance Network, SSN, sensors, according to which more than 27,000 pieces of orbital debris is clogging the Earth's orbit. Where does all that space junk come from? The moment humanity successfully ventured outside the orbit of Earth with the launch of Sputnik 1, orbital debris began to pollute the new frontier. And as long as us humans keep at it, the space debris is an inevitable reality. Every rocket launch leaves behind boosters, fairings, and interstages, among other fragments in the lower orbit of the Earth. Apart from rocket launches, rocket explosions contribute heavily to the rubble in space. Only earlier this month, Russia blew up a 4,850-pound satellite in order to test a weapon, setting off several safety alarms. According to experts, the colossal explosion ended up increasing the space debris at least by 10%. And now there's a massive amount of shrapnel whooshing around our orbit at hyperspeed, posing a significant threat to astronauts, satellites, and the International Space Station. The dangers of the debris in space. NASA's data, as we mentioned earlier on, only accounts for the bigger, more traceable pieces of space waste. The agency cautions that there's much more debris suspended in space that is too minute to be tracked, floating freely around our orbit. The fact that it's small doesn't make it any less of a threat to human spaceflight and robotic missions alike. At the end of the day, all that debris is traveling at extremely high speeds, matching that of these spacecrafts, which is why an impact from even the smallest piece of it could mean serious trouble for the spacecraft and for the team on board. Why should we be concerned down on Earth? Don't we have enough problems already? Why not just leave this to the rich? They're the ones traveling to the moon anyway. Here's why you might want to file this under your list of things to worry about. For starters, we depend more on the equipment sent above than you might think. Everything from our unlimited internet access, weather services, and imaging to research around climate change depends heavily on the satellites orbiting Earth. Those satellites come into contact with the rubble we've managed to generate, we'd be in the middle of a blackout. Our GPS systems would shut down, which would be catastrophic, especially for the air traffic. They'd be flying in the dark, quite literally, without any air traffic control. And if that isn't enough vexing for you, remember everything that goes up must eventually come down. But thanks to our awesome carbon footprints, the debris is staying up a little longer. Eventually, however, there will be enough debris to trigger a cascade of collisions between bits of space junk, which would leave our orbit completely broken. What are we doing about space debris? You'd be surprised to know that the earliest guidelines to fight the space junk hazard were issued back in the mid-1990s by NASA. By 2002, there was an interagency space debris coordination committee to tackle the problem of man-made debris in space. The said committee had 10 member nations, all of whom adopted a set of guidelines so they could coordinate their efforts for the cause in a more efficient way. Then we have an aerospace firms that are dedicating a considerable amount of resources and manpower to tackle space junk. Some have designed small satellites that can further minimize these smaller pieces of debris before deorbiting them. While a few companies have adopted a simpler route, as they plan on simply using a spacecraft as their personal garbage truck to pick up space junk. Others are being slightly more inventive in their methods, using nets, harpoons, and even magnets to contain the orbital debris. The gas station in space. Recycling is the newest addition in the endeavor to clean up space. Recently, a company devised a plan that involves recycling all that space junk we talked about and processing it into usable rocket fuel. Let's get into the technical nitty-gritties of this little project, shall we? Scientists Scientists aren't planning on bringing any of this space junk back to Earth, as one might assume. The junk-to-fuel process will be happening within the cosmic confines of space, kind of like your local gas station, only in outer space. It's a joint global venture with 3 companies at its center: the South Australian company, Newman Space, the Japanese startup, Astroscale, Nanorocks, and Cislunar of the United States, each bringing their own set of expertise to the table. Newman Space, with its in-space electric propulsion system, can move satellites around or deorbit them if necessary from the LEO. Astroscale has managed to equip satellites to capture bits and pieces of debris, while Nanorocks is working on advanced robotics that'll help in both cutting and storing space rubble while staying in orbit. Cislunar is working on developing a space foundry of sorts to melt the gathered junk into metal rods. Can this theory be turned into practicality? It looks good on paper, but what are the chances it'll work in reality? Even Newman thought it to be too futuristic when he was approached to be a part of the supply chain in space. Chief Executive Officer of the project, Hervé Astier, shared how Newman straight out said it would not be as easy as it looks. However, NASA doesn't believe the project is too ahead of its time, as the team managed to get a grant from the agency, went ahead with their prototype, and voila, it actually worked. We did a live technology demonstration. One can grab a piece of debris, one can cut the debris open, one can melt the debris, and we can use that, said Astier. It's refreshing to see companies working on taking recycling to space, while mostly just trying to destroy the space junk and burn away the lifeless rockets, along with other usable parts. Astier thinks that his approach makes more sense business-wise too, since the debris can be collected and has the potential to be renewed. There's no point not using it. World's first gas station in space, circa 2015. The talks of the first ever gas station in space started way back in 2011 when 2 satellite companies announced they'd be launching a refueling craft into space to help other satellites fuel up while staying in orbit. The refueling craft, you could also call it a flying satellite gas station, was supposed to help overcome the fuel limitations of the satellites orbiting around Earth. In a way, they were also trying to fight the hazards of space debris, as once their fuel tanks run dry, the satellites die down, languishing in space as dangerous debris. The satellite, dubbed the Space Infrastructure Servicing (SIS) vehicle, not only tackled the refueling and the space debris issues, it also offered other services to the orbiting satellites. It would inspect, tow, reposition, and make minor repairs when needed on the satellites. The graveyard orbit. The whole idea of processing space rubble into fuel is the first of its kind to remove space debris. The SIS moved the junk and found to what can be called the graveyard orbit, which was high enough to not pose a threat to the other satellites orbiting the atmosphere. The primary aim of the SIS was to maintain and eventually extend the lives of the existing satellites. The debris cleaning was more of a convenient byproduct, if anything. That too not entirely, as it only took the thread and left it elsewhere. The space pretty much remained cluttered. Over the period of time, some pretty decent ideas have come up to fight space junk. The problem, however, lies in the application of these ideas. ScienceWire noted that there is little incentive for individual countries to clean up space debris. Here's to hoping the newest project actually takes off, because if it doesn't, scientists claim that our little blue planet might end up with rings like Saturn. However, unlike Saturn, ours would be made of the space debris we've left out there. And that about wraps up our space dive today. Let us know your thoughts in the comments section, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.